Welcome back to the channel. This will be my team selection for Gameweek 28 in FPL. I've only got one free transfer, but free chips are available in order to navigate the upcoming blanks and doubles. That includes the free hit, wildcard, and the bench boost, but I have used the assistant manager and the triple captaincy already. What you see on screen is my FPL challenge squad, and this week, all managers will have their points doubled, and there are 3 coaches eligible for table bonus this weekend. That includes Juric away to Liverpool, Ruud van Nistelrooy away to Chelsea, and Ange Postecoglou at home to Bournemouth. There are 2 managers that I'm considering, which include Ange Postecoglou, who you see on screen, and the other one is just Arne Slot, which is quite vanilla and very basic, but the best team in the league facing the worst team, and with the points doubled anyway, I think it's a very secure route to getting some points there. And in terms of my kind of starting 11, you could say, I've got Alisson in goal, who won player of the match against PSG, and we can talk about that in the deadline stream as well on Saturday. Trent Alexander-Arnold, Munoz and Gabriel, with Salah captain, Diaz, Palmer and Son, then Isak and Watkins up front. I'm quite bullish on that front line, and with all the injuries and suspensions to Cunha, Mateta and other options across all positions, which includes Lewis Hall, they have all been covered in my recent podcast, but it means we have to be very careful with our upcoming transfers and use our chips in the best possible way. Like this video, subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss a single upload or live stream, not just for FPL, but also UCL Fantasy. There will be more videos headed your way over the weekend and another deadline stream next Tuesday. But before all of that, the focus is on FPL. That deadline stream on Saturday, I will answer all of your questions so you're well prepared for Gameweek 28 and beyond. Without further ado, let's jump straight into it. The top 10 captains, a heat map, and much more stats and data is broken down in the best wildcard team, and you'll see an updated version for the Saturday deadline stream, so be sure not to miss it. As for Gameweek 27, I'll provide a quick review, and I did delve into this in my Transfer Plans podcast last week. Matt Sells kept a clean sheet against Arsenal in that goalless draw, and it seems like such a long time ago. Ever since that, Nottingham Forest have progressed to the quarterfinals of the FA Cup, beating Ipswich Town on penalties, and Matt Sells made a crucial penalty save in the shootout, and Arsenal won 7-1 away from home against PSV Eindhoven in the Champions League, setting several records in the process. But I'm still not interested in buying Arsenal attackers. I'm more interested in their defenders like Gabriel at the back. As for my own defenders, Trent Alexander-Arnold kept a clean sheet and kept things very simple, but had a bonus point taken away from him since the time of the last recording when I talked about my Gameweek 27 review. Levi Colwill got 14 points after scoring against Southampton, and his expected points has soared over the last couple of days, and against Leicester it's probably the highest you'll ever see for him this season, and he is expendable after Gameweek 28. And Robertson came off the bench against Wolves in that 2-1 victory and got booked and just played 18 minutes, so that was a huge disappointment from me, especially with Mikalenko on my bench getting an assist and getting 6 points overall. My midfield wasn't particularly great, to be honest, but there were 2 standouts in Salah, who got the assist, and it was quite underwhelming after Palmer's flop, where he missed several big chances against Southampton, and he had an XG figure of 1.07, and Salah had one of his worst games this season, and that was followed up by another pretty underwhelming performance against PSG, but you can forgive him for that with his consistency. Brian Mbeumo got an assist against Everton, so it's not too shabby, and as you can see there, Semenyo was subbed on for me with Isak missing out, so I made the right call benching Semenyo. He got booked and delivered 1 point against Brighton in that 2-1 defeat, but he always finds a way to get back into my starting 11, yet when he does return, he's always first on my bench. And Justin Kluivert scored a consolation goal, it proved to be, but he got maximum bonus points, and that delivered a double-digit haul, so I'm very happy with this signing. But more often than not, if I have to decide between starting Justin Kluivert or Semenyo, I'm going to go for the template option of Justin Kluivert because he's on penalties, and I think he's been far more consistent than Antoine Semenyo. My forwards, though, were a huge disappointment. Chris Wood blanked against Arsenal and missed a big opportunity, and Matheus Cunha blanked, and in the FA Cup, he got that red card in the 120th minute for violent conduct, and he's now going to be unavailable until Gameweek 31 at the very least, but the FA have charged him, and that means he could be suspended for even longer, possibly until Gameweek 33, so that's something we have to wait and see what Cunha's response to that charge will be, and then we can see if Cunha is going to be a very long-term absence from our FPL team. So that transfer has completely flopped. I bought Cunha earlier this season and he was a great signing for me, but this time round it has proven to be an absolute disaster. Now with my bench, as I mentioned earlier, Isak is now no longer yellow flagged. He scored against Brighton in the FA Cup, but was subbed off due to a small injury, but I covered that in my transfer tips video and also the best wildcard team, and it looks like it was just fatigue. So that's one of the only positive updates we have from Newcastle. But Sven Botman will be out for the rest of the season. The same goes for Lewis Hall, and Anthony Gordon picked up a red card, and he will miss the next couple of games, including that Carabao Cup final against Liverpool. Mikalenko got the assist, which was a big frustration from me, but in the end, these things can happen, and Veltman is still orange flagged. That's something else I need to deal with on top of Cunha's suspension, and Valdimarsson isn't really worth mentioning. Now, in terms of my points in the rank, I did get another green arrow to make it 5 in a row, so I've gone up to 323,000 in FPL with 61 points, but it was 62 in my transfer plans video. That's because Trent had a point taken off from the bonus points. I don't like this system where they can tweak it by the end of the game week, and it does lead to some inconsistencies, especially depending on when the game week actually ends. But that was my game week review. It's also worth talking about other factors like I usually do in terms of prices and my transfer plans, and that's what I'm going to do very briefly in this podcast. So not much has changed in the last couple of days, but my value has actually gone down. Robinson is one of the players who have suffered a price drop, and I would expect Matheus Cunha to also suffer one fairly soon. Justin Kluivert is now 6.1 million. I think that's been the case for quite some time. And the other player who's gone down fairly recently is Isak to 9.4 million. He was the most sold player up until the last couple of days, and I still think he's worth holding on to, especially with Mateta being injured for the next couple of weeks, and he's going to miss Game Week 28 against Ipswich Town, and Matheus Cunha missing the next 3 matches at the very least. I think the best front line you can build includes Chris Wood, Isak, and then you go for an Erling Haaland if possible. Otherwise, I would recommend differentials or lower owned picks like Vissa, who is very appealing at this moment in time. The only downside is Brentford's long-term fixtures, which aren't looking too great. There's also Vanossen as a mega differential, and he scored upon his return in the FA Cup against Wolves, and that could spell trouble for Dango Ouattara's minutes. And the other one is Marmoush, and that is a much cheaper way to enter that Man City attack, especially if you're not too keen on Foden or you just don't have the money to go for Erling Haaland. So those are the prices broken down. Not many changes have happened recently, but these are my transfer plans. Veltman to Munoz is still on the cards, but because I'm not looking to free in Game Week 29 if possible, and I've still got a full 11 now if Veltman is fit, I think it's probably best for me to invest in someone who features in Blank Gameweek 29, and I can always buy Daniel Munoz after the blank just in time for Crystal Palace facing Southampton away in Game Week 30. And with all the injuries for both Palace and Newcastle, you're kind of looking at it and you think Isak from Newcastle is the one you really want to have, and from Crystal Palace it's Munoz. Do you need that much more on top of it? You can definitely add 1 or 2 assets, but you don't need triple ups in Newcastle and Crystal Palace because some of their best assets like Hall, Gordon, and also Mateta in the case of Palace, they're all injured at the moment or suspended. So I think it does look quite grim at the moment, but Anthony Gordon will be available for double Game Week 32, and that's where I can buy him in the midfield once again and see if he can deliver in my FPL squad this season. Now, some other transfers I'm looking to make include Veltman to Aït-Nouri. So very similar, but in this case, I just go for one of the more appealing Blank Gameweek 29 defenders. If I had the funds, I think Gabriel would be at the top of the agenda, facing Man United away this week, and then it's Chelsea at home, so not the best of fixtures on paper, but Arsenal boast a great record against the so-called Big Six, and they are unbeaten in several years against this level of opposition. But because I can't afford that sort of move, and it would mean selling Robinson, that doesn't make too much sense in terms of my structure and setup. So Veltman to Aït-Nouri is a very simple move. Ideally, I think Cunha would have been more than enough cover for Wolves, and Veltman is facing Man City away in Blank Gameweek 29 anyway, and with the injury, it's just another excuse to get rid of him. He might be available in time for Game Week 28 or 29, but Veltman has been stinking up the place for quite some time now, and my defensive line still needs a lot of bolstering. I know Colwell got a great return last week, and I'm happy to keep him for one more game, but even Colwell would be on the chopping block, and the likes of Gabriel would be major upgrades in the long term, and maybe by downgrading Matheus Cunha, I can get the funds necessary to then buy Gabriel in that defensive line. And one such transfer could be Vissa, maybe Marmoush, although that transfer wouldn't help me so much in terms of funds, and the other one is Vanossen. So I think one of those cheaper strikers in Vissa or Vanossen could come in for Matheus Cunha, and that in turn helps me buy Gabriel in for Veltman. So that looks very appealing. And that's where the temptation to roll this week could come in. Then I'd have 2 free transfers for Blank Gameweek 29. I could buy Gabriel for Veltman and also Vissa or Ivanosen for Matheus Cunha. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below and let me know what you're looking to do for Blank Gameweek 29. But this is how my team would set up with my current transfer plans. Matt Sells in goal, facing Man City at home. I'm not that bullish on a clean sheet, and in fact I've predicted a Man City win, but they have struggled at the City ground over the years. Only one victory, which came last season, but Sells and Nottingham Forest have been spectacular this season. They're in an FA Cup quarter-final, and they're third in the Premier League table right now. They've kept the most clean sheets, and I'm very happy to have Matt Sells until the end of the season, and I'd argue he's the best goalkeeper for Blank Gameweek 29, facing Ipswich Town, who was their opponent in the FA Cup in the round of 16. As for my defensive line, there is a slight concern about Trent and whether he'll start this game. The same could be levelled at any Liverpool asset, even Mohamed Salah in the midfield. But I've got Colwill facing Leicester at home and Robinson away to Brighton. So once again, I've got a benching dilemma in my defensive line despite my concerns with Colwill long-term and Joel Veltman being orange flagged because Mykolenko is currently on my bench facing Wolves away. The last time Everton played Wolves, they won 4-0 and Mykolenko got an assist and some bonus points to deliver 11 points overall, and he was in my starting 11 at the time. That was one of the few occasions where Mykolenko really stepped up for me, and that could be another concern there. But Robinson got an assist against Brighton in their last meeting and produced 6 points, so it's not an easy call in my opinion, but Trent and Cole will have to start unless we get news before the deadline that one of them is benched. With my midfield, it looks very strong on paper, but it wouldn't have been Semenyo in the starting 11 if Cunha didn't get suspended, and it would have been a 3-4-3 formation, and I could still go for that sort of thing if I make a forward transfer and buy Vissa, Ivanosen or Marmoush. But Salah at home to Southampton is one of the most appealing single game week fixtures when you're looking at the triple captaincy, but my advice is to save it for a double game week like 32 on Alexander Isak, for example. Cole Palmer facing Leicester at home, he has been so poor recently with a lack of goals and assists which have compounded those poor performances, but I do think Palmer will step up against Leicester and that opposition is perfect for him to thrive. I did highlight him in the heat map section on my best wildcard team video and I'd encourage you to check that out. I'd also be intrigued to see your rankings of the best captaincy options this week. Jean-Philippe Mateta would have been easily top 10 as I discussed in my best wildcard team video, and that meant the 10th selection that I've put isn't really the most appealing for me and someone I'm not backing too much, but the other 9 I think are great options, and some of them like Ollie Watkins are going seriously under the radar. But with the rest of my midfield, I've got Brian Mbeumo, who, spoiler alert, is 10th in that captaincy list. He doesn't have a great record against Aston Villa, only 1 goal and 1 assist in 5 matches against them, and Brentford have really struggled against the Villains in recent seasons, but Aston Villa don't have a great record playing in the Premier League just several days after having a Champions League game, so maybe that will play a part and Brentford have a chance to get some points on the board. And I've also got Kluivert and Semenyo. I'm very happy to start one of them away to Tottenham. I think they can create chances and score some goals, but to have 2 of them, I'm not quite so sure, and Semenyo is someone that I really have no faith in because of my history with him this season. I made some mistakes, sure, in terms of when I start him and bench him, but I also just think he's been an absolute troll and I can't win with this guy in my setup. The solution might be to sell. But with my forward line, I'm very happy with these 2 in particular. Chris Wood and Alexander Isak. I think they're good options this week, more so in the case of Isak, and until the end of the season, I'm very happy to keep both of them. The only downside is that Isak blanks in 29, but he's easily benchable with my setup, and I don't need to sell him even for just 1 game week, especially with a lack of forward options who really stand out to me. And I've been quite consistent over the last couple of months saying that Chris Wood, Isak, and one of Mateta or Cunha make up the best front 3, especially in terms of value, and we can now see a shift towards Erling Haaland in some cases where people sell the likes of Salah and Palmer, more so in the case of Palmer, which I think could be recommended in future weeks, but don't do it this week when Palmer has Leicester at home. Now, I still got a benching dilemma despite the fact I've got 2 flagged players. Joel Veltman is orange flagged and he could return fairly soon, but he's still on the chopping block. And Matheus Cunha will be suspended for at least 3 Premier League matches. It could be up to 5, possibly even more. Who even knows at this point? But I've got a backup goalkeeper that doesn't play, an orange flag player, and someone who's out for the next couple of weeks. And I still have a benching dilemma and headache between Mykolenko and Robinson, Both of them returned against their upcoming opposition earlier this season, and even Semenyo is someone you could feasibly bench this week, especially with the fact I've got Justin Kluivert to cover that Bournemouth attack already. But I would only do that if I bought a striker to replace Cunha, and the top replacements with my setup would be Marmoush, Ivanosen, or Visser, who is probably the best of the lot, but Brentford's fixtures long-term aren't great, and I've got Brian Mbeumo to cover Brentford offensively regardless. Now, with the captaincy, there is a slight debate this week because Mohamed Salah could have his minutes managed with that PSG tie during midweek, and despite the fact Liverpool got that crucial 1-0 victory, a smash-and-grab win in Paris, I still think the tie isn't fully over. But at Anfield, I think Liverpool will go through. I'd be very surprised if the Parisians were able to turn things around. And this is a great opportunity for Liverpool to rotate in the Premier League. They'll still get the job done against Southampton and win very comfortably. So the likes of Salah, Trent, and all these great FPL assets, could they be rotated from the bench, maybe from the get-go? Or do they have their minutes managed and they're subbed off around 60 or 70 minutes? Now, if Salah was able to get that amount of minutes in Game Week 28, I'd be very confident that he's going to pull off a very big return, and that doesn't actually put me off too much. But with that possibility of being subbed off before 60 minutes or not starting the game, that could be enough to captain a Cole Palmer or Isak, who both feature in my top 5 for the captaincy list I provided in the best wildcard team video, and I'll also address this in the deadline stream on Saturday as well. So that is my current thinking with the armband. Those 3 are under consideration and nobody else. With expected points, Sells has 3.7, Trent Alexander-Arnold has 5.5, Colwill has gone up to 4.4, and Robinson has 3 compared to Mikalenko's 2.9. So Fantasy Football Hub are recommending Robinson in my 11 instead of Mikalenko. Then I've got Salah with 9.8 expected points, Palmer 7.7, Mbeumo is quite high at 5.6, Kluivert and Semenyo both similar, but Semenyo is quite favoured actually in the last couple of weeks according to Fantasy Football Hub. Chris Wood with 5.3, and Isak has gone back up to 6.8 after the yellow flag has been cleared, and the rest of my bench isn't really worth talking about. Cunha and Valdimarson unsurprisingly have 0, Veltman has 1.1, and Mikalenko is the one that I might regret benching once again, just like I did in Game Week 27. It's also worth previewing Blank Gameweek 29, and with the help of the website fpl.team, it is achievable. You can compare different chip strategies and transfer plans using this website and having a clear visualization of how your team would look like in future game weeks. So my original plan was looking very solid. I had Matheus Cunha available, and he was a captaincy option against Southampton away, and it would have meant I could buy Ait-Nouri and Milenkovic for the likes of Colwill and Veltman and have a full starting 11, which looked very solid and competes with most Blank Gameweek 29 teams. But now it is a little bit different, and I do think not having Erling Haaland could be quite costly. I could sort of compensate for that by buying Marmoush for Cunha in Game Week 29, but assuming that I do roll this week, which I discussed throughout most of this podcast, that's my current plan. I would have 2 free transfers in Blank Gameweek 29, and I'd buy Marmoush and Ait-Nouri for Matheus Cunha and Joel Veltman, who are both flagged, of course, and Cunha is definitely missing Blank Gameweek 29, and that would mean a starting 11 of Sells in goal facing Ipswich Town away, a back 4 of Mikalenko, Colwill, Robinson and Ait-Nouri, Palmer, Kluivert, Mbeumo and Semenyo, with Marmoush and Chris Wood up front. I think with the captaincy, I'd lean towards Chris Wood, but Matheus Cunha was going to be my captain until he did something absolutely ridiculous at the end of the Bournemouth game, sent off for violent conduct, and he wasn't the only one alongside Anthony Gordon. So there is so much to talk about in FPL, and it's an absolute mess, especially in that forward line with all the injuries and suspensions, but they've all been addressed and covered in my recent videos, like the best wildcard team and my transfer tips. I discussed the best replacements for Cunha and Mateta and what we should do with these assets, because in the case of Mateta, he could be available by the end of the month, which was talked about by their manager, Oliver Glasner. But that is a sneak preview of Blank Gameweek 29. I could even take a hit and sell Colwill to someone like Milenkovic, for example, or maybe just focus on buying Gabriel instead. I do favour Arsenal in that matchup against Chelsea at the moment, but I've also got Cole Palmer in this team, so maybe going all in on Chelsea isn't necessarily a bad thing. And despite Arsenal winning 7-1 against PSV, I think any squad that approaches that game with a low to mid block can still cause them problems, and we've seen that happen all season. So I wouldn't get too carried away with that performance and result, but football is unpredictable, and you just don't know what's in store for you. And that's why my videos and live streams will help you and offer a guide for the next couple of weeks. And there we have it, another team selection video chalked off for this season. It is going very quickly, especially at this stage of the campaign. We've still got a few chips left, and with the blanks and doubles coming up, it's going to go by so quickly, but I hope you enjoy the journey and get the green arrows and mini league positions that you want. I wish you all the best of luck for the rest of the season. As always, if you haven't already, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss a single upload or live stream for both FPL and UCL Fantasy. And you've got a lot headed your way with a best wildcard and limitless team for UCL Fantasy, my team selection, a deadline stream next Tuesday, and for Fantasy Premier League, the plan is to do a deadline stream on Saturday, that is guaranteed, but also a reaction stream could be headed your way on Saturday night or Sunday evening, so keep your eyes peeled for that, and if you want to see that piece of content, then be sure to let me know down the comment section below. Follow me on X, Instagram, and Blue Sky, DylanRCM, and check all the links in the description below for my Patreon and the championships, for early access to my videos, amongst many other perks, or just if you want to support the channel even further. There's also my Discord server, FPL League, and Spotify, so there's a lot of different ways to connect with the community as well as myself. And thank you very much for your support over the last couple of months. The growth has been incredible, and hopefully we push on towards new goals in 2025.